So, in the fall of 1999, when my wife and daughters who are here today, my wife and I were newlyweds living in New York City. I remember reading an article in the New York Times about a controversy surrounding an exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Do you remember this? And specifically, this painting, which we're going to project here, entitled The Holy Virgin Mary, by British artist Chris O'Feely. Now, the mayor of New York at the time threatened to terminate the museum's lease unless it canceled this exhibition. Now, the controversy, as it was reported, was not about the depiction of the Virgin Mary as black, although I have little doubt those in opposition to it harbored that prejudice. The stated opposition was to the materials used to depict such a consecrated image. The description of the painting lists the materials as paper collage, oil paint, glitter, polyester resin, map pins, and elephant dung on linen. You didn't know this was going to be a day all about dung. I didn't realize that either. You've never heard the word dung and manure so many times in a worship service, but I guess that's a UU worship. Anyway. So you see there's lacquered elephant dung on her chest, and these two are clumps of dung support the painting with glitter spelling out the name of the piece. You can take the picture down. And the collage, the paper collage that I mentioned in the list, oh, actually, could you put it up one more time? The paper collage I mentioned as one of the materials used, you see the little pieces everywhere? Those were images cut out from adult magazines. Now you can take it down. Thankfully, that mayor did not succeed in closing the museum, and the exhibit remained open to the public. The artist, Chris O'Feely, British-born of Nigerian descent, said that the use of the dung was something he discovered on a trip back to Africa, on a trip to Zimbabwe, actually, and although crass-seeming, was a way of bringing that landscape into the painting, as well as a nod to the modernist art history through the dung's status as a found object. That's okay. Not an object I necessarily want to find, but as far as the paper collage I mentioned, he said, as an altar boy, I was confused by the idea of a Holy Virgin Mary giving birth to a young boy. Now, when I go to the National Gallery and I see paintings of the Virgin Mary, I see how sexually charged they all are, and mine is simply a hip-hop interpretation of that. In thinking about this incident, I began to consider the curator's thought process in planning this exhibit. And then this led me to think about who decides in any given instance, in any given location, what is shown, what is seen, what is experienced, and more importantly, how things are experienced. I thought, how much does our free will play a role, and how much of life is curated for us? The psychologist B.F. Skinner argued that free will is an illusion, albeit a necessary one. Our behavior, he claimed, our will to behave, is influenced by historical causes and current experiences and contingencies. For instance, choices that I have made in my life were influenced by the fact that I was born into a Jewish family in the white suburbs of Detroit. Facts for which free will was not at all a causal factor. Wasn't my choice. It is not of free will that I enter into mental states of hunger or depression at times, and yet they influence my decision to take a bite of food. Nothing we encounter in life is exclusively curated by us. This building was constructed by others. The ocean out there was created mostly by natural forces and is being desecrated by human forces, both beyond my complete control. And that all being said, regardless of whether I have free will or not, regardless of influences by outside forces, I would remind you that in each moment, we still have some ability to actively make choices and to actively contribute to the curation of our existence. We still have choices we can make, even given the influential influence of mental and physiological and historical or societal pressure that's all beyond our control, beyond my control. I can still choose how I react to a painting. I can still choose to enter or exit this building, to acknowledge and respond to my Jewish upbringing. To take a bite of food is my choice, or to be a conscientious caretaker of the ocean. To the extent we have choices, each of us co-curates our own lives. The mistakes often made are sometimes we think we cannot curate at all. Nothing can be done. Have you ever felt that? Which means curation of our lives involves courage and risk and strength. Or the other mistake we made is we believe we are the sole curators. We did it all, when in reality, how we interact with the world always impacts and is always impacted by others. Now, the etymology of the word curate includes the Latin word curare. And no, that's not the stuff they shoot for hunting the indigenous, to stun animals. That's curare too. The Latin word curare comes from the Latin root cura, meaning care. Curare is to take care of, to care for. And it also shares etymology with cuore, meaning heart. Curate, heartful care. What's more, curate is not only a verb describing the action of selecting and organizing and presenting and looking after items such as art. It's also a noun. A curate is a minister with pastoral responsibilities. A curate who cares is a spiritual guide as well, if you will. The root extends to other words that encompass a meaning of heartfelt care, including curiosity, the desire to investigate and learn from a place of caring. Curiosity. So to be a courageous and caring spiritual guide who understands that we are all in community is to live our UU principles of interdependence, of pluralism, justice, of transformation, generosity, equity, all centered in love. UUs, we are communities of curates, curating curiously and courageously. Say that 10 times fast. That curation of our existence takes many forms, ranging from the gathering of souls together in worship, as we are doing today, to courageously fighting for justice against fear and hatred. The key element is the root of the word, cura, heartfelt care, the love which is always centered in our principles. Heartfelt care. And that's what makes the work of the UU community so important and honestly in this world so rare. Take that painting, for instance. Rather than a knee-jerk reaction coming from a place of fear and prejudice, similar to what that mayor had, the curation with curiosity would include considering what we are looking at, who created it, who else will experience it, our own biases in relation to it, and an inquisitive orientation toward whatever considerations might evolve. In fact, to truly live our principles, it would also include consideration that that mayor himself was reacting from a place of truth and meaning for him, albeit misguided and influenced by fear. But it was his truth. So as a curate who curates curiously, in considering that some devout Catholics like that mayor might be genuinely disturbed, instead of threatening to close that museum, open space for an explorative platform on the exhibit inclusive of diverse viewpoints. Curating curiously does not preclude disagreement, but welcomes it as a source of learning and a source of growth emotionally and spiritually. Some of you may know who this mayor was, who tried to close the Brooklyn Museum and stifle freedom of expression because his religious sensibilities were offended. If you don't, it was Rudolph Giuliani, who has since defended the human embodiment of dropping dung on Christianity, a name which I will not mention. Dropping dung on meaningful Christianity. The courage it sometimes takes to curate curiously is also mitigated, I will say, by privilege. We must remember that. Opportunity and resources mean more choices. I can choose how to interact with someone who might consider themselves my enemy, for instance, without worrying that they're going to kill me, mindfully considering an approach with conditions, with boundaries. I have the privilege to do that. Yet who am I to counsel the same to, for instance, a young boy born into a war-torn land and recruited into the military by violence and coercion, forcing them to risk their lives daily, giving them far fewer choices? It's mitigated by privilege. In order for us to curate a world where all are equal, those of us with the ability must not close our museum exhibits, our dialogue, or our minds when we feel threatened, but rather curate our reaction to the world with even more curiosity, care even more courageously. Curating with curiosity is extremely challenging when it seems no good choices are evident. It's often the case. And much of what is offered from others is untenable. Yet to be this spiritual guide, this curate for others and for ourselves, to be a beacon for our UU principles and values, we must have the courage to be bold in our commitment to love, compassion, and peace, even when it seems impossible and our safety is at risk. We must employ curiosity with care towards all views, fears, considerations, traumas, and truths of others with whom we are all interdependent. This talk today, I was going to give an example, and it wasn't going to be about the Middle East. But in thinking of an example of how to curate curiously right now, that is what organically came up. And it's important that I have the courage to address it. Curating my reaction to the situation has been an incredible challenge. But utilizing curiosity as investigation with care and compassion, I know for a fact that first and foremost, no more lives can be lost, and I must join the call for an immediate cessation of violence. War does not bring peace. It does not bring safety. In learning with compassion about the situation of all the parties involved in this war, it is abundantly clear that my curated reaction must be with the awareness that this war harms Palestinians, it harms Israelis, it harms Americans, it harms the entire world. Investigating with compassion this situation, from my perspective, also reveals a bunch of things to me. It reveals to me that I must support peaceful protests for a ceasefire, while recognizing also that some of my Jewish friends and loved ones, including my family, are genuinely afraid. My curiosity has revealed that the protesters truly just want the killing to end. And at the same time, many of these Jews I know have generational trauma, and they're fearful that their identity is being attacked. It means fighting against both Jewish hatred and Palestinian hatred in any form. Curiosity is investigating with compassion. Curiosity as investigating with compassion reveals to me that I must curate my reaction with this understanding as well. That even as a historically oppressed Jewish people rightfully desire a homeland in Israel, which is now, by the way, the most politically progressive country in the Middle East, the genesis of that same country involved colonization and it involved violence. Both of these things must be acknowledged and accounted for. Curiosity with compassion leads me to understand that there are well-meaning and pacifist Jews, including in Israel, that are being misled and manipulated by a right-wing extremist Netanyahu government, and well-meaning people in America and in Israel that are being led by hierarchical governments employing oppressive tactics which must be dismantled. By curating my response with curiosity, I am led to validate the terror of my Middle East and South Asian Arab and Muslim friends and colleagues who are witnessing their communities living in conditions that cannot support life and dying by the thousands. To curate with curiosity means holding multiple terrifying truths, and sometimes wonderful truths, and understanding with compassion that the human reaction to fear and anger is varied and unpredictable and can only be matched by greater love. Yeah. Yes. When someone asks me why I am a UU, I believe our purpose is to confront the things that challenge us, whether it's a painting of the Virgin Mary with dung or an issue that threatens to rip humanity apart. I believe our purpose is to build a community that works against great resistance and sometimes even greater odds to center love that is often ignored, often avoided, often withheld, and even often killed. I believe our purpose is to do these things as curates who curate in community with curiosity and courage. This work is hard, and it never will be easy. Not everyone has the will to do it. There is a risk and suffering involved, but the spiritual and practical rewards, both, are incalculable. Incalculable. Most importantly, if there is a chance to heal the world, which as a UU minister, I have to believe there is, our work here is indispensable. Thank you.